we'll get going.
Okay.
I guess I want to let people know our next meeting is going to be candidates night. And I think we actually have our mayor, Shelley Petrolia, here tonight joining the meeting. And she'll be back January 10th with the rest of the Democratic candidates for a candidates forum. The February meeting's February 14th, and we're really lucky to have Dave Arenberg, our state attorney, Carrie Howard, our public defender, and Micah Kubik, who's the executive director of the ACLU of Florida, for a panel on reforming the criminal justice system, or as some people call it, the criminal injustice system. Now,
You sit further back.
David is going to give a brief rundown on Zoom for people who aren't familiar. And we've already had some glitches tonight. So, and then he'll turn it back over to me to introduce Barry, and we'll get going.
Okay, so generally when we've been doing these, we've been doing from user, I hope you meant Thursday, January 14th, not Sunday, January 10th for the candidates forum. Did we announce that? Candidates forum, Michael? Okay, anyway, it will be Thursday, right, Michael, the candidates forum?
Yes, Thursday, the 14th.
Okay.
January.
So generally, we've been doing what's known as a webinar format, which means you have a panel on top and no one else can really be seen and you can't really talk. We decided going forward, let's try to do some just plain meetings because everyone likes to look at everyone else's house and you can't do that in the webinar format. Studies have shown that 15% of the time when people are on Zoom meetings, they're looking behind the people at their house. Have something innocuous back there, or do what Rob did and have a beautiful Delray Beach sunset. If you want to turn on your camera and you haven't, on the lower left, if you move your mouse there, it varies depending on what device you're using, but regular PCs, things like that, you should have the option to start your video on the lower left, and that way we can look at your house. Everyone can actually talk. Please unmute yourself when that time comes. You can click right on your picture, and you should have something should come up that says mute or unmute, and that way you can talk. If you want to ask a question, you should have an option somewhere that says raise your hand. Or you can do this the old-fashioned manual kind, raising your hand. If you won't see everybody in the meeting on the PC screens, you can see 25 at a time. So that would be scrolling to the right. There will be a little arrow as you move your cursor around the screen that will allow you to shift over to the other people. So if you can also use the chat feature on the bottom, which is kind of cool to send messages to a particular person or everyone, something like that. That's about it. If you have any questions, just raise your hand or press the button for raise your hand. You should have icons for reactions. If you like what someone says, you can do this or this, right? So and it will automatically go away after a few minutes, so a few seconds, so you don't have to turn it off. That's about it.
Okay.
I'm going to mute everybody to start. Unmute yourself. That way we don't have extraneous noise coming in when the phones go on and stuff like that. So Michael, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Okay, so let's get started. Let me introduce Rabbi Barry Silver. He's the only rabbi to have served in the Florida legislature. He's a lawyer and a rabbi. He's been a leader in the resistance against Trump. I've seen him speak at a whole bunch of rallies. He's a great speaker, and he was kind enough when I sent out the announcement of this meeting saying we're still looking for a guest speaker to offer his services. So take it away, Barry.
Thank you very much, Michael. I want to thank you for allowing me the privilege of sharing some thoughts with fellow Democrats.
One more thing, Barry, sorry, before
go
we
ahead.
go. If you want, guys, in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, usually there's your view option. If you switch to speaker view from gallery view, you'll essentially just see this, whoever is talking at the moment, and everyone else will be little icons around them. You might want to do that because you get a much better look at their home. Thank you. Okay, sorry, Barry, back to you.
No worries. Okay. I do want to thank Michael. And this discussion, this conversation is going to be a little different than what you're used to at a Democratic club. I have many things that I want to share with the Democratic Party that will be unsettling to some, but I think we need to try to evaluate what went wrong, why we lost Florida, and what we need to do to make it better. So everything I'm going to say is based on my love for the Democratic Party and its ideals that it stands for, which I feel we've fallen short in many ways. And I'm going to do something else that I normally don't do. I'm going to give you a little bit of my bio, not because my bio is that significant, but just to shed a little light on what's been going on within the party. My bio is not much different probably than many people here. I see a lot of activists here. I'm sure a lot of people here have been active in liberal, progressive causes for a long, long time. And I'm no different. And if it's okay with Michael, I just wanted to take a few minutes, if I may, because it's Hanukkah, just to share a little bit, few minutes about Hanukkah, if I may, because it is Hanukkah. I'm a rabbi, so I have to say something about it, okay? First of all, if you're a Christian, you should celebrate Hanukkah, because 165 years before Christianity came around, the Jewish people fought and preserved monotheism and Judaism. If that didn't happen, there would be no Christmas. So people who are Christian have every reason and should celebrate along with the Jewish people Hanukkah. If you believe in religious freedom or freedom of any type of a group of people to fight against a dominant empire, then you have reason to celebrate Hanukkah. Hanukkah has in the description of it in Jewish scripture something that's patently false and very dangerous. The notion that God fought on the side of the Jews in order to achieve a victory. To me, the concept of a personal God is very harmful. And the concept that God fights in battles for any group of people is even more harmful. It's dangerous and it's odious and it's not accurate. Hanukkah was steeped in paganism. The word shamash for the shamash candle comes from the word shemesh for sun. It's a holiday that celebrates light over darkness, good over evil. And what is historically accurate is that a very small group of people threatened by the greatest empire on the earth of that time with the destruction of their culture and their way of life, fought back and won. And what they did was they established a principle that everybody can accept, a principle that is known by many, many people, that if you will it, it's no dream, as Herzl said, or as Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of dedicated people can change the world. It's the only thing that ever has. And he also established what Ben Gurion said, that if you want to be Jewish, you first have to believe, if you want to be a realist in Israel, you first have to believe in miracles. So I believe in miracles. I believe in fighting for what's right. And this holiday does that to the extent that we have a rational view towards it. Now, I want to talk about the main topic, and that is my concerns with the Democratic Party. So I'm going to go back in time very briefly. I'm going to tell you that when I was 11 years old, I lived in Stamford, Connecticut. And by the way Moses got to Canaan, God asked, where do you want to go? And he stuttered, and he was trying to say, and they took him to Canaan. He was trying to say Connecticut. He couldn't get it out. So I'm from Stamford, Connecticut. And I really do appreciate, again, Michael's inviting me, because the last time he was there when I was speaking, And he heard someone come up to me and said, "Rabbi, I loved your speech." I woke up from it refreshed, and he still invited me back anyway, so I appreciate that. So when I was 11 years old in Stamford, Connecticut, I saw newspapers being tossed in the garbage, and I thought, this is horrible. There was no curbside recycling. It didn't exist. So I formed a group that I called Concern, Committee of Nutmeg Citizens, because Connecticut's the nutmeg state, engaged in recycling newspapers. I formed Concern. I got all my little friends around with me on the street, and we went from house to house with paper bags and string and gathered the newspaper and took it to a recycle center and got some money and gave it to feed homeless people. I did that at 11. When I was 15, I worked for George McGovern before I could vote because he said he would end the Vietnam War, and I campaigned for him and worked for him. I've been dedicated to the Democratic Party my entire life. My parents, my dad who's a rabbi, my mom who's still around at 96, are committed Democrats, and so are my grandparents. My grandfather on my dad's side was a socialist with the Arbeitersring, and so I come from a proud tradition of liberal, progressive Democrats my whole life. When I was in my 30s, I had the privilege of representing the National Organization for Women against Operation Oppress You. They call themselves Operation Rescue, a group of quasi-terrorists who tried to force abortion clinics to stop performing abortions in order to capitulate to their terrorist tactics, blockading. Well, I had a girlfriend at the time, and I helped her write a resume to get a job that I thought was one of the best jobs she could get at an abortion clinic. I helped her to get that job, and she was working at the clinic when she called me and said, "There's 200 people blockading my office. Can you come over here?" And I came over. I'd never done any law like this before, and I filed a lawsuit. And for the first time in history, Florida or RICO, a racketeering law, was used against abortion protesters, which not only shut them down, but it got damages against all of them and against the church, which I eventually collected from Jerry Falwell, because Falwell jumped in with his attorneys to try to, and Pat Robertson, to try to overturn the decision. But I got a judgment. It stopped the blockades, and National Organization for Women and I became very close. And they said to me I should run for office, and they and my father's congregation and my father and my mother, who played piano, got me into office. I got into office with no money at all, nothing from any special interest at all. Now gave me some money, and environmental groups and animal rights groups did. Lobbyists gave me nothing. I got into office, and it was like one of the best days of my life. I'm in Tallahassee now, and as soon as I got up there, the Democratic Party, through their leadership, had a caucus with all the freshmen, all the people who are going to teach me how to be a good legislator according to the Democratic Party. And they gave me a list of lobbyists, and they said, call up these people and find out what they want and offer it up to them. They're going to take you out for meals, and offer it up to them because we need to raise money. And I went to the leadership at that meeting afterwards, and I said, I understand your need for money, but that's not what I do. I raise issues. I raise consciousness. I don't raise money, and I don't deal with lobbyists, and I don't want their meals. Well, there was a rule then that you had to accept meals, Democratic Party too. And because I refused meals, they were upset with me. And because I refused to take money, they were more upset with me. And because I also shared information from Sierra Club, I went to Sierra Club and said, I'm your conduit. And I went to campaign finance reform groups and said, I'm your conduit. And I spoke their issues, which very often contrasted with the Democratic Party, which was taking money from developers and sugar industry. By the way, the sugar industry, as you probably know, treats the Everglades as their private sewer and then destroys it and asks the taxpayers to clean it up. And the developers do the same thing by putting up developments near the Everglades, and then they also cause all types of damage and want us to pay for it. Well, the Democratic Party was taking money hand over fist from the sugar industry and the developers. And when I spoke out against both of them, I was persona non grata, and the Democratic Party told me that they were going to take me out of office, and they were going to find somebody to take me out. They looked around for someone. It was hard to find somebody because I was fairly popular in those days. And then they found somebody who was a Republican. They got him to change party. He became a Democrat. He had no loyalty to the Democrats. They gave him a ton of money from developer sugar, and he ran a vicious campaign against me. And the Democratic Party leaders also went against me. That was so vicious that my mother, who helped me get into office, was so disgusted. She said, never, ever run for office again until I'm dead, because I don't want to see anything like what happened before. And so I lost by 500 votes, but I still remained a very loyal Democrat. And I still did everything I could to help the party. And I pretty much kept my mouth shut in order to try to help the party and not to try to destroy things. But I've seen over the years that keeping quiet is a very, very, very bad idea. Because what happened was I noticed that other candidates like me, who are strong environmentalists, were not given support at all, and were not helped, and were not looked kindly upon. And so I noticed that some very bad things were happening. You probably know Robert Watson. He was running for office, but the Democratic Party forced him out. The leadership forced him out and threatened him if he stayed in, because he refused to raise money also from special interests. The party does not like that. They don't like people who don't want to be, what they told me that I was not a team player because I wouldn't raise money. And I told them, I speak French and Spanish and Creole. You can send me to all the neighborhoods and I'll recruit people and register them to vote and tell them why they should vote Democrat. They were simply not interested at all. They thought it was the most ridiculous thing to say something like that. And so the Democratic Party worked hard to take me out of office, and they succeeded. Now, let me bring you up to the campaign of Gore and Bush. Okay, when that campaign was happening, I was working hard for the Gore campaign. And when he lost by the butterfly ballot, I do a lot of work with Haitians. My father performed the first bar mitzvah in Haiti, and I've been working with Haitians ever since. I speak Creole. So it's not a lot, but I speak some Creole and a lot of French. The Haitians came to me and they said, this election was totally wrong. We voted for Buchanan.
Mhm.
Our votes went to Buchanan because we did not understand the butterfly ballot. It was totally confusing. And they found out that about 80% of the Haitian votes went to Buchanan, who was a known racist. And they told me there's no way we would have voted for him. And because I worked with the Haitian community, they hired me to represent the Haitians in a lawsuit to try to overturn the election. The Democratic Party came in with the Gore campaign and filed a motion to eliminate my case and said, we're doing the case. Silver has absolutely no right to speak for the Democratic Party. He's out. And the judge agreed, and my case was dropped, which would have won, I believe, and would have overturned the election. Instead, they asked for a recount, and they recounted, and they counted the same way as it was before, and they lost the election. Okay, so that was very, very disconcerting. Okay, the many other things happened along the way. When the Gillum campaign came along, I offered to help them out and tried to work with them because, like I say, I have a lot of connections with different parties. Well, they were not interested because the Democratic leadership wants absolutely nothing to do with me because I'm outspoken on environmental and other issues. At one event with the Gillum campaign, they billed this as an interfaith rally for Gillum. So I came out and offered to speak on behalf of the Jewish community. At that rally, there were many ministers who spoke, no rabbis. So I went to the people running it and I said, I'm a rabbi, I'd like to speak. They said, no, we don't need any rabbis. I said, but it's interfaith. They said, yes, it's interdenominational Christian. Well, there were Jewish people there who were outraged and incensed. And the campaign was run in such a way that people, grassroots people, were ostracized. I believe that's what happened in this campaign also. I believe that's why the Democratic Party is having difficulty in a lot of the elections, because I think the grassroots activists who know how to motivate people and get people out to the polls are usually overlooked. Professional type people come in. And this is very harmful. The activists in the community should be recruited by the Democratic Party to get out the vote. The Democratic Party is very good at organizing precincts and things like that, but they're not so good at giving people a reason why to vote by working with grassroots activists and getting them out there. So, like, for instance, I do a lot of activism in the area. as was mentioned, I've gone to Mar-a-Lago many times doing campaigns against Trump. So is Mark Offerman. Mark Offerman is one of the best recruiters I've seen. This guy is an incredible organizer of rallies. He was completely ostracized, drummed out of town. They had nothing to do with him for all types of political nonsense. We asked the Democratic Party to join with us in the demonstrations at Mar-a-Lago, no interest. I run environmental rallies to protect the ag reserve, no interest. We do things grassroots on all types of issues. The Democratic Party is not getting involved in these issues. And so activists who could motivate and get people out to vote, they're just not, they're not being encouraged to get involved with the party. And that's why you had a third party in the last election in 2016. You had a third party candidate who came in and won. So what does the Democratic Party need to do? I believe that it's shocking that the Democratic Party could have lost Florida. You have a candidate in Trump who's got to be the most egregious, outrageous, traitorous, arrogant imbecile. The fact that this guy won in Florida means that we should do some serious soul searching. The Democratic Party should ask itself, what did we do wrong? But they don't. They just go on doing the exact same thing as before. Now we got Georgia coming up. We better win Georgia. If we win Georgia, it'll be a game changer in the Senate. We could do great things with the Democratic Party united. But the Democratic Party, to me, is not responding as they should. They're not learning from their mistakes. And I think that we need to do a lot to help the party win the election. So I'm here to advocate for change within the Democratic Party, to work with the grassroots people, stop raising money and stop raising issues. Stop trying to be Republican light, where you curry favor with these same people, and start speaking out strongly for the issues. I'm very encouraged by what I see with Biden and with Harris. I'm very encouraged by them. I think they're great. By the way, my father was raised in Wilmington, Delaware. I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware. I have fond memories of Wilmington, Delaware. I explained to the campaign here, the local campaign, whoever, I love Wilmington. My father was friendly with Biden. They exchanged correspondence, and I offered my help in the campaign here in Palm Beach County. Of course, nobody ever got back to me, and I wasn't able to have any involvement at all. And not just me. People like Mark Offerman and others. I know people in the Black community are also concerned also about being shut out and ostracized, or not involved in the party. One other thing I want to mention, so far what I said I know is controversial, but I'm going to say something now that's more so. Okay, I represented the family of Corey Jones, a Black teenager who was shot by a police officer. And it's such a tragic, horrific shooting. This man was a wonderful human being, a beautiful person who played the drums and was just a wonderful person. And he was shot needlessly. I represented the family, and I went to the family and I said, let's work together to try to establish justice and to try to root out the systemic racism. And I said, but I want to know what your thoughts are on Black Lives Matter. And they said, we don't work with Black Lives Matter. We don't want to work with Black Lives Matter. This was the grandfather who was a bishop, a Christian in the community, and his family. We don't want them involved. And I said, good, I don't either. We had a series of rallies and demonstrations. There wasn't 1 ounce of violence, not one hint of violence. These people worked with the police department in Palm Beach Gardens to bring about reforms, and we had seminars, and it was a beautiful transformation that occurred here, and people came together. I then spoke at a rally with Black activists down in Boca Raton, that after another tragic shooting of Black youth. I went to them and I said, are you going to work with Black Lives Matter? They said, we don't work with Black Lives Matter. I said, good, either do I. and the rally was very peaceful. Now, why do I say this? I've spoken about Black Lives Matter, and I have liberals and progressives who hate me for it. Some of them don't even speak to me anymore. I believe strongly in the protection of Black lives. I have devoted my career as an attorney to represent Black police officers without charging them a dime for years who are being discriminated against. Worked with NAACP, worked with underprivileged people of all different races. I believe strongly in civil rights. I'm a civil rights attorney, but this organization is not the best organization to champion this issue because their initial charter and their documents have things that are very distasteful. Some of it is very anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. Other is very violent towards the police. And the whole concept of defunding the police is a horror. It was strategically wrong, and just common sense wise, it doesn't make any sense. But Black Lives Matter and other radical groups said they were for this type of thing and saying horrible things about the police. I've sued the police. I represent dogs. I do animal rights law. I've represented at least 10 different dogs who were shot by the police because they have no regard for human life, some of them. They have no regard for, a lot of them are misogynistic. They don't like women. They don't like Blacks. They don't like Jews, and they don't like dogs. And they push their weight around, and I know that they're bad news, a lot of them, but not all of them. And to suggest that all the police are bad or that we should defund the police is insanity. And I'm saying that as somebody who's sued the police over and over again. I have no love for the police, but that is insanity. And I also want to share something else that I know is very controversial. I speak out against organized religion. I speak out against organized Jewish religion that teaches nonsense that God wrote the Bible or that God is on our side or that God is doing anything. I don't believe in a personal God at all. I think it's all nonsense, and it's dangerous nonsense. So I don't have any use for people who take the Torah literally. I think it's got genocide and all types of dangerous things. However, the Christian scripture is also very bloody and has a long trail of bloodshed, and especially towards Jewish people. I'm suing the school board now for teaching lies about Christianity. But Islam also is the Quran is very violent. How do I know? Because the violent passages come right out of my Torah. It's a carbon copy. The violence in the Quran comes straight out of the Torah, and all of it should be condemned. But when I say that to people in the Democratic Party, I'm hit with a torrent a lot of times of negativity, booing, ostracism, anger, revulsion. I can talk bad about Christianity. They don't mind that. That's fine. But if I say anything bad about Islam, that's not fine. Christianity is just as bloody or more so than Islam. It's just recently in the last 50 years or so, they've calmed down. But I believe that they're accountable for the Holocaust and everything else. All of them are bad news, literally. But Islam today is dangerous. And when I say that, the Democratic Party gets upset. I think the Democratic Party needs to recognize the fact that Islam is a danger, and that Christianity or Judaism taken literally is a danger. They're not going to do it because it's politically incorrect, but I think that if they did, it would make sense. The final thing I'm going to say is this. We, the Jewish people, have been fleeing from the Democratic Party in large numbers. And this is shocking. Okay, we still have a majority of Jewish people who are Democrats, but a lot of them aren't. And a lot of them are rabidly anti-democratic because of the Democratic Party's position on Israel. Okay, now, I'm a critic of Israel. I don't like the settlers. I think they're unsettling. I don't like the fanatics who are there. However, Israel is the bastion of civil rights in the Middle East. If you're in the Middle East and you're a woman, you want to be in Israel. You don't want to be in Jordan. You don't want to be in Egypt. You don't want to be in Gaza. You don't want to be under Hamas. You don't want to be in these other, you want to be in Israel. Israel's the only country in the Middle East that you can criticize the government and live to talk about it. It's the only country in the Middle East where you can practice any religion. They celebrate Baha'i and Islam and Christianity. It's a bastion of freedom and democracy, but it's mocked and maligned by people in the Democratic Party, and they should know better. If they believe in civil rights, they should support Israel. And the Democratic Party should say loud and clear, we support Israel because we support civil rights. We don't support all of their policies. There's some things they do we don't agree with, and we'll challenge them on that. But we support Israel, and anybody who's going to call Israel apartheid, racist, and all this nonsense, we should not countenance that. We should speak out against that. I'm not saying they should be silenced. We should have a discussion, but at least discuss it. But the currying favor with these groups has harmed the Democratic Party, and it's harmed us, especially not only with the Jewish community, but with fundamentalist Christians and everybody else. We need to talk at least about these issues and open it up to discussion. We should not be politically correct. We should not have certain things that you can't say, otherwise you're going to be pilloried. I've been run off the stage by progressives, by liberals, often because of what I say about Israel or Islam or whatever. We should not do that. We should allow free discussion of everything, and then our party will be strengthened. That's what I have to say. There's a lot of other people on here that have a lot of great things to say also. I'd be interested in hearing from them. And Michael, I know what I said will not sit well with some people, and I do appreciate you're allowing me the privilege of speaking. And I'll say one other thing before I conclude. The principles of the Democratic Party, and I believe in universal health care, sane, rational gun laws, a repudiation of the NRA, which is stand for not respectable anymore, championing the environment, standing up for the environment, fighting against climate change, speaking up for the underprivileged, speaking up for the poor, helping out the minority communities. These are things that we should be championing and saying loud and clear. And I will say it to my dying day. I don't care if there's people within the Democratic Party that I don't get along with. It doesn't affect me whatsoever. And I think we all need to do that. The Democratic Party will win every election when we raise issues and consciousness and not raise money. That is my conclusion.
Okay, I'm going to lead off. Do you want to say something, David? Okay.
I'll follow you.
I think the biggest issue you raise is one that we have been talking about since I got to Florida 6 years ago. My aunt, Marion Kulik, who's David's mother, started this club back in the early 90s. And she has been just was distraught for years with the focus on, it was vote by mail, no emphasis on getting the vote out, no emphasis on messaging. We have a newsletter, you know, that we now do monthly. That is, I think, the only, you know, the only piece of substantive literature that is put out by the Democratic Party or any subset of it in Palm Beach County. The flyers, when you go into the office, are for the golf tournament, you know, which is fundraising. You need money. That's, you know, I mean, you need a tool to get the vote out, and vote by mail worked very well in this election. But at the basis, the bottom line is you need to tell people why it is they should vote for the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party needs to know also that you know, the very things you're talking about, climate change, minimum wage, the minimum wage passed by 62% in Florida, the amendment to raise the minimum wage to $15. 62% of Floridians voted for that, and Biden lost, you know, because they didn't talk about that. They, you know, and they didn't respond to charges of socialism, which is, you know, the biggest load of crap. I mean, you know, I told people, your mama's a socialist. You know, I mean, anyone that's 40, your mama's a socialist. They don't they don't get it, and the Democrats don't fight back. So, I mean, to me, that's the biggest change that needs to happen. We just had elections to the Democratic Executive Committee or Council in Palm Beach County. Of the 4 officers, chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer, the vice chair changed, and everyone else remained the same. There is that they are promising, and they always do, to reach out, to go down to the community level, you know, but it hasn't happened in the whole time I've been here.
Michael, can I just say one other thing? You know, I speak Spanish, and I've been to Cuba, and I've been to Venezuela, and I produced the message in Spanish, in Spanish, and the message was this: if you come from these countries and you are worried about dictatorship and fascism and socialism, whatever, Trump is the epitome of Chavez and Castro. He defies free speech. He used the military to stamp out free speech. He wants to take over the government. He spews hatred and lies. He is the guy that you hate. And the one that you want is someone who's going to have the government help people with socialized education. We have that here. Everybody who goes to public school is socialized education, social security. You're right, Michael. We could have fought back. And I made a message. I said, please just take this message and send it out to the Spanish-speaking community. They had no interest in doing that whatsoever. They didn't refute the most obvious, blatant lie. And how is it that when Trump was impeached, how was he not impeached for the emolument clause? I mean, the guy was doing so many illegal, crazy things, and they find one little thing to go after him on instead of going after him for a whole boatload of things. They were too meek and too mild against it. So I agree with you, Michael. We got to fight much stronger.
We do. Well, we got our work cut out over the next 2 years. David, are you going to?
All right, so I do officially want to point out that Reverend Silver does not speak for the club or the organized Democratic Party, I suspect. But the subject of this meeting was going to be why we lost the election. And I love that you threw out a whole bunch of reasons that we might have lost the election. I will point out that the reason the vice chair didn't change is because the vice chair didn't run.
Right.
For the election, so that's probably the reason for that. One of the things that bothers me, though, is, Reverend, as you say, to get the message out, the problem to a large extent is getting the message out costs money. And a huge amount of elections these days are decided by ads and negative ads, and they cost a huge amount of money. Now, if I were Bloomberg, I might be asking for some of it back. But, you know, the huge amount of money that got spent in Florida may very well have helped Biden take Pennsylvania and Michigan, and, you know, some of the other states, because they couldn't spend the money there and in Florida, and they needed to do it here. There are just so many things you brought up. It's impossible to go with them all. But yeah, my biggest is that, well, you know the joke, I don't belong to, not only do I not belong to an organized religion, I don't belong to an organized party either. The Democratic Party not being organized. But I don't know, you know, reaching out to the community, working with other groups is of course what everyone has just promised in the elections for the Palm Beach County. We were all going to reach out. We were all going to, you know, organize with other groups. I hope we do it this time. But my basic complaint, my mother's basic complaint, was not with a vote by mail, which is a wonderful tool, and this year had to be done. The problem was that there was never anything else going out to persuade people. It's almost like everyone believes that we all watch MSNBC or at least CNN, but this is not the case. People, you know, people watch Fox. They read, you know, headlines on internet, and you know, it does take money though. And if you're not getting it from the insurance, you know, from the sugar growers, and I don't know how you're going to do it.
Michael, I have to respond to this because I've heard this all my life and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. This focus on money is just abysmal. And that is the whole problem with the Democratic Party. I'm fed up with it. You should never, ever, ever take a dime from developers who are paving over Palm Beach County and destroying the environment and helping to exacerbate global warming. This is despicable. despicable that the Democratic Party would take a dime from these people or from the sugar industry. We live in a new age now. It's called the internet. If you're doing good things and working with grassroots people and you're really making change, you don't have to raise a ton of money. When the women's rights movement got women's rights, that wasn't done through money. When the Vietnam War ended, that wasn't done through money. When the civil rights movement started, that was not done by money. That was done by grassroots activists making change. And that's what we need to focus on. This focus on money is the destruction of the Democratic Party. When I won my race, I didn't raise any money from it. I never asked one person for a dime, but I had a lot of grassroots support. And I know it can be done. Yes, if you want to get some money and you have some millionaires who want to give you some money, fine. But the focus on money is destructive, not only to the party, but to the soul of the party.
Michael, I want to point out that under the participants tab, the list of people who have their hands raised is first, and it's in the order in which they were raised. So we call them mayor next.
Where are the hands raised? I'm not seeing it. You want to call on people, go do it.
On the participants tab, you'll see the blue hand next to the mayor, Arlene, and Steve.
Okay.
You see,
Well,
so
let's take it in that order. The
right.
mayor,
As people
Arlene, and
raise
Steve.
your hand, you'll be added to the queue.
Okay, great. So am I next? And can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay,
and yes.
great. All right, so great comments by the rabbi, and I so appreciate it. And I'm not offended at all, to tell you the truth. I think there's a lot of truth in what Rabbi was saying, and I appreciate it. This is my opinion, and you know, I come from kind of being in the middle most of my life. I was an NPA for the majority of my life and decided to switch over to become a Democrat. My family has always been lifelong Democrats, my husband as well. So I joined the crowd. I think that the way that I see it is that the Democratic Party is losing ground. And I think that part of that has to do with, from my perspective, and I'm just an elected official in a local, race, just watching this from me. It feels as though we're not watering the seeds. You've got great people that are running and nobody seems to recognize them. And that's really scary. That's not what's happening in the other party. They basically know who's running and they help them and they make sure that they get them going on through the process. I don't really see that with the Democratic Party. I see it's not as put together and strong in order to be able to get those seeds started at the grassroots level, which is where I believe the Democrats are the best. They basically can go out, get people to, sign up to become voters, but they don't necessarily push that candidate that has the best chance of winning in their race. And that's where I think we're losing some momentum. The other side, from my perspective, are tricksters. They don't tell the truth. They put out anything is okay. And there's nobody there holding them accountable. And as a result of that, in my experience, people, because they don't have the time or the wherewithal or the energy to really look things up, believe what they're being told more often than not. So whisper campaigns can start by the other side that make others, the population, feel uncomfortable where it may or may not even be true information. So there's nobody pushing back on the obvious tricky nature of the Republican Party coming in. And I had a firsthand experience of that right here locally, where Jim Bonfiglio ran. And, I was even dragged into the race because now I know why, because the candidate that was running for the Republican Party state representative was planning on having his wife run against me. So, I was dragged into defunding police and all of these different things that are real, points of interest for the general population. And I found myself having to do battle by myself. I mean, there were 500, and I'm telling you, nasty emails sent to me. I mean, they were exceptionally, disgusting. But I wrote back to every single one of them. I mean, it was 2 full weekends of my time in order to be able to try to make sure that the truth got out. But that's almost impossible for an average person to do that's in these seats. They don't have the time to do that. So I really have to say that we need to put the time and effort into those that are on that grassroots, that are the best way to be able to grow your candidates into these next up positions. Because what's happening is I see it filtering down. It started up at the top, and they're just looking to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until they can really mesh into the ground level in order to be able to raise that back up. And it's working. So anyway, those are my 2 cents worth. I know that, and I agree, money is not everything, but when you have unlimited funds on the other side against very little funds on this side, because I'm with Reverend Silver. I don't like to take anything from the developers or any of that. I try to just keep it very grassroots and make sure that I am taking money for my campaign from those that I am going to be representing directly. I think that's the right way to do it, because just speaks to me. So anyway, but I know what's coming in my race. I'm going to have, because I saw what happened to Bonfiglio, I'm going to have a card a day hitting mailboxes against me. And there's probably not going to be a lot of truth to it, but that's not going to be necessarily what is going to be communicated and messaged to the readers of those cards. And I'm telling you, it works. I've watched it over and over again. So I think we got to change the game. I think that that there is some truth to going in and making sure that there's a great campaign online, because there's great avenues. Everybody's got emails, and you can do as much, grassroots campaigning on your computer as you can walking door to door. But I don't think you can leave the door to door alone either, because door to door really is that face-to-face contact. People get to know and trust you, and that dialogue is very, very important. Most of our constituency is not of the that are voting is not of the IT age yet. That's coming, but we're still kind of the old school where we like to see people and shake their hand and look into their eyes. So anyway, that's my comments tonight. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be able to speak in front of everybody, and I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you, Mayor.
Steve, 1 second.
Yeah.
If you want to, I got a request from Steve West that his hand didn't go up. If you go on the participants tab, you should have an option. Okay, in the bottom of the screen somewhere is the participants tab. If you open that up, you should be able to raise your virtual hand, or it'll say raise the hand somewhere on the bottom. But otherwise, Steve will add you to the list.
Yeah.
Steve West, you'll follow
Arlene, Steve Fratkin,
Sean, and then we'll have Steve West.
Right. But before you go, Arlene, I want to add one thing to what Barry said before about Mark Offerman, because when I came down here, and one of the things I neglected to say in terms of messaging is being out on the street, marching past Mar-a-Lago, which we did. And we did because Mark arranged that. There were a lot of marches and then they dried up. And that's something that we have to change. We need to be out. I mean, Trump is a non-issue now at this point. I mean, I think the best thing to do is pretend that he is a one-term president, like James Buchanan, and like all of the presidents between Andrew Jackson and Abraham Lincoln, who never got a second term, and we don't talk about now, and focus on the people that we need to go after, like Rubio and like DeSantis. And Rubio has an office. We need to be out on the street calling them out.
No, no, I'm trying to get a good internet signal.
You sunset or sunset?
Arlene,
Tried both. Now I'm back on Sunset.
But you gotta break this. You gotta
I'd like to begin when
yeah,
everyone's
go ahead, Arlene.
attention, yes. Oh, so many thoughts. Okay. About the money. I'm not a good budgeter, but I do know something that I want to say in the middle. Because the election that we had on Tuesday night, I must have been on the phone 8 or 9 hours in the 2 days before talking to Dems about who we're going to vote for and why and what the backgrounds are and all of this. I was shocked. We have never seen a budget presented at the Democratic Party, whether it's a lot of money, whether it's not a lot of money. How is the money being spent? Because it is a means to something. It is a means to showing support, creating trust with all of the different components of the Democratic Party. Maria Cole said it well to me. I don't know, I think she said it to me when we were talking on the phone. Maybe she said it in public too. I can't keep it straight now. The Democratic Party might be, Terry might have considered it as a family, but you don't treat the party as if one size fits all because of its diversity and all the different communities that are in it. And so many got neglected. So I was just thinking in the conversations going on this evening is that where are the resources going? Are they going to the precincts leaders to develop the precincts so that what Mayor Petralia was just saying, the message, the ability to decipher what's truth and not, and who has your back and who represents your issues become clearer. So I think the budget would have something to do with that. If you go to the Democratic office, it's shameful in one sense, but yet it's descriptive of the care that we're getting from the top. So that has to change. I'd love to see a budget. The other thing is that issues that arise, the toxicity and the dysfunction that is coming out so clearly to me in our party. Usually I dig in and I find something to do and I just go all at it. So I'm not paying attention necessarily all the time to the bigger picture. But issues are left unresolved, very important issues. Why we don't see the people on the streets anymore in West Palm with all those amazing rallies we have was a deplorable, disgusting, horrific thing that happened to Mark Offerman and it was among us. It was among the progressives in our party. And there could have been some resolution 2 years ago on that. But no, the Dems, the leadership steps back. The communities of color felt neglected, not supported, their caucuses, their Democratic clubs. So that's where budget might come in to say, hey, yeah, we do care about you. How are we going to build the trust? How are we going to educate our precincts? So I think that's mainly what I wanted to say tonight. There's a lot of work. Oh, about the 4 members that are got the top chairs. I'm just hoping, well, Sophia said a lot of things, what she was doing with the
You're
she was
breaking
going
up,
out to do
Arlene.
that. She said, I never knew that. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Did you miss a lot of what I was saying?
Oh, no, just for a second.
Okay, maybe I'm pushing around here. I don't seem to stay still. What Sophia Nelson was saying, the things that she was doing with people of color. I didn't know that. Those are leads that we need to work from. Why, the disconnects are what's destroying us. we all might be well-intentioned, but we have to learn. The other thing is, that's very important to me is the racism in us, and learning at this wonderful opportunity, not wonderful, that's the wrong word, but it's an opportunity with the curtain being drawn and to see what has transpired, the wealth gap, and to get an understanding. And then every one of us now are on an anti-racist curve, a learning curve, and not to say, oh, I'm not a racist. Well, that's nice, but that's not enough. How are you being anti-racist? And
Yeah.
where do you fit? And can you listen? And can you invite? And so I have a lot of hope for Maria Cole. I'm gonna hold her feet to the fire, because
Mhm.
she said all the right things, but her tone could be so angry, and I understand the anger, but it's off-putting. And so I told her, you have to learn to invite people to hear you so that they can join you. And she talks about conflict resolution. So I do have hope in this, that this leadership has a shift, and maybe Terry can recognize, she's very nice, she's very sweet, but she also knows that she has to bring things to resolution and
Yeah.
in too many places. So that's how I identify where we need to go.
Okay, Steve Fradkin?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. I don't see me on the screen, so I don't know whether you can hear me or not. First of all, I want to say I am, as many of you know, I am a seasonal resident, and I'm glad to be back here in Florida. It was 30 degrees in Boston today, and you think it's cold here. But what I want to talk about is political communications. Those of you who know me know that I made most of my living for the past half a century in political communications. I've been a consultant to almost 200 campaigns with a 70% win record. Pretty proud of that. My last victory was a couple of months ago, so I'm pretty proud of that too. But I heard a lot of talk tonight about messaging, about while it's great that we're going out and registering voters, and it's great that we're getting voters to vote by mail, we're not getting the message out. We're not getting the Democratic Party's message out. And last year, and I know Joy Howell, is that her name, is online with us in this meeting. So I just want to say hello to her. She's the
Yeah, she's coming up.
communications director for the state party. Pardon me? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
She's coming up. She's on the list to talk.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just wanted, but what I wanted to talk about was last year, around this time of the year, I started making contact with the state party and talked to Terry Rizzo, who gave me a great big hug when I told her about my background. I've also been on the Massachusetts Democratic State Committee for 10 years and 8 years on its executive committee, chairing the committee that dealt with local organizations, local Democratic town committees and city committees and ward committees. I was chair of that committee. I offered my help to the state committee, and after I was introduced to Joy, I was told, no, we're fully staffed and we're going to stick with the status quo. I would like to just go on record right now with anybody who is listening and cares to listen, that I am ready, willing, and able to turn this party around in Florida, and I wish somebody would call me.
All right. Sean, I think, is next, and then Steve West. Sean, where are you? Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi.
Can I respond to that, Michael? Or I know I'm in the queue, so.
Yeah. Sean, you mind letting Joy jump in there?
Sure, go for it.
Go ahead.
Internet connection's not the best, so, but Steve, any old ideas are welcome. I was doing statewide communication I then went in committee, which is a part of it's an RE, as you know. I think some help on messaging would just be absolutely terrific. I guess I want to respond to the discussion here in a couple of days. Number one, at the national level, it's very clear that we had both a tactical and a message failure. And it's clear because I think some of you may know, but we didn't win. We didn't flip a single legislature nationwide. So that tells the Florida Democratic Party, it wasn't any local failures here. I'm sure they did, but nationally, we had, and you've already, I think, the socialism, we clearly figured out a good respond to that. It's clear because it cost us all over the country and the polling, the research afterwards. Just to talk about a couple of things. As I was working with all of our state house candidates, they consistently had to respond to the defund the police message. And it didn't matter whether or not they had ever said anything remotely resembling support for that message. Most of them had not. That was a message that we got stuck with, frankly, and no quite combat that. It was, if you were a Democrat, you were in favor of defunding the police. And as I think Mayor Petrolia indicated earlier, mail piece, that message unfortunately stuck. We did have in favor of defunding the police, mail pieces that went out in reaction to that. Our message was that we're in favor of better resources, which obviously meant social workers, some psycho help and assistance for police. There were a lot of things that went into that. However, that message, that and the socialism message, I think were our two message failures. And then tactically, frankly, we had Biden in the basement long. And the Republicans, we started out in the spring with the Democratic Party had built 150,000 voter registration advantage. And as many of you know, we had also about a 700,000 advantage on vote by mail registrations. But unfortunately, since we were observing, social distancing and really governed by science and taking our lead from the national party, tactically speaking, we were doing virtual organizing. And you all know this. And gosh, thank you so much for everything everybody on this call did, because thank God we saved the country, if not the state. But we did technical organizing that was virtual. It was Facebook Lives. It was, Zoom meetings, and it was great in a way. We innovated, et cetera. However, the Republicans were out doing door-to-door voter contact, touching voters personally, engaging in two-way communication in a very real way. And they cut our voter registration advantage from 350,000 in the late spring, which Terry Rizzo and the state party had built it up to painstakingly, to 150,000 right before the election. And, I don't have to tell you what happened. I mean, we had, we had a lot of early vote by mail, or early votes rather, and voting on election day that kind of cut into that whole lead. And then I'll just touch on the Latino organization, which we're still dissecting. Everyone is still dissecting it. And I just want to say to you, it was not just in Florida. If you Google the results in Texas, where I'm from, I kind of keep an eye on what goes on in the Rio Grande Valley. They did the exact same thing there. They used the socialism message. They used the strong male message. They did a great job using influencers in key Latino and Black communities. They even cut into our lead in the Black community in some places. I mean, it's really a lesson to us that we're everybody nationwide is still trying to figure out. So all I can say to you is we're famous as Democrats for the circular firing squad, and we can all do better. All of us can do better. But thank God we did what we did. I mean, we saved our democracy.
We did.
So please, all of you tonight, give yourself a pat on the back. Every single thing you did, every sign you waved, every sign you placed, every phone banking hour you spent, every email you sent, that made a difference. And I just want to say, I noticed Mayor Petrolia is on the phone and or on the Zoom and talked earlier. I mean, we have that same Republican machine playbook that is based to take over Del Rey. And what does that mean to us? That means, guess what? To the point that the rabbi made earlier, the developers will run out Del Rey. I mean, just to give you an example, last night I watched the city commission meeting and Mayor Petrolia led the way to keeping and preserving docks to every extent that we can. There are some legal issues involved and some property rights, and I don't know that we're ultimately going to prevail, but had she not led that way, we would be losing docks. We would be, we've already, given up nibbles that are districts and quality of life, Del Rey. I mean, I could go on and on. I'm on the planning commission, and overdevelopment is something I've fought my whole life. Anyway, I don't want to take more time. I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to the rabbi for the fight he's waged all his years. Thank you to Michael, who's carrying on this tradition, this family tradition that he has of leading Democrats in Del Rey. And thank you to Mayor Petrolia. Thank you so much for preserving our quality of life and doing everything you can here.
Sean? And Emily, so it's Sean, Steve West, and
I got it wrong.
Emily, I think.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sean. You got on mute.
I think I screwed that up.
All righty. Am I
There we
good?
go.
There you go.
All righty. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me over here.
A little louder,
Can you hear me?
louder, Sean.
Okay. How about now?
Speak.
I got to yell now. Is this
Yeah.
good?
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to start with, I have a lot of points based on everyone's perspective, which I have to address. First of all, I wasn't born in the United States, as you can tell from my accent and my looks. And so I can actually give a perspective from an outsider who experienced Europe, Middle East, grew up under the theocracy of Sharia law, which had no right to democracy, to vote, and to pretty much any right to come to the United States. Supposedly, the model of the free world and free speech, it is pretty disappointing. As I consider myself American now, I can't go back to Iran anymore, which is the country that I was born in, due to the fact that I'm an atheist now, and I was a Muslim when I was born. So even if I change my religion from Islam to Christianity, Judaism, or anything else, there's apostasy for that. There's a death penalty for that. So I can never go back to that country. So definitely US is my home now, and I care about it. So all of the things that I'm about to say, please bear with me. It's only because I care. I'm going to start with saying I'm very disappointed with Democratic Party. Even though To me, they are the party of more values, or at least values that I care about. I don't care about being conservative towards obviously religious aspects. I don't care about obviously abortion, and abortion should be illegal. I'm exactly the opposite. I'm pro people, I'm pro science, I'm pro change, because always change can possibly bring something better. But if you stay where you are, you can never advance. So in that aspect, I apologize to say this, but amendments should change, should be challenged. Some of them are good, some of them maybe are not. There might be a better way. Yet, I don't see Americans actually challenging their system whatsoever. You guys have brought up the concept of socialism, which is something that they can attack Democratic candidates like Bernie Sanders now, as if to say it's something like communism, as if to say they are, anyone who's socialist is a bad person. Yet I actually see Democrats not even understanding or knowing the definition of socialism or capitalism. I challenge people that they think they're active and knowledgeable about politics to research the definition of socialism and capitalism. Socialism simply means that businesses are controlled by the government or the state. Capitalism is exactly the opposite. It's controlled by the private industry. That's it, nothing else. So what we talk about socialism and capitalism is actually our ideas of what socialism and capitalism is, which is incorrect. So therefore, even in language, we are missing the point and we cannot convey the correct information to one another. There is not a single country on the planet which is absolutely 100% socialist or capitalist. China, one of the biggest examples, it is only capitalist government. Behavior-wise, communist government. Behavior-wise is absolutely capitalist, more than United States. United States claims that it is capitalist, behaves completely in so many aspects as a socialist. Post office, Social Security, Medi-Cal, Medicare, bailing out banks, bailing out companies, funding people, helping people, unemployment, all of these are socialist things, which government is actually providing for people, pretty much. A good balance of a healthy government in that aspect is the good balance of socialism and capitalism combined,
Yeah.
which yet we can't even have this conversation in the United States. It is extremely sad to be there, and it's extremely sad to see the richest, most powerful country on the planet. People are extremely uneducated in that aspect. So getting pretty much, I talked about how, the system is wrong. I actually took a lot of notes. I apologize. I have to look into it and just continue. If you give me a second. So technically, in that aspect, I started with saying that I'm pretty disappointed in that aspect. Another thing that I don't believe we completely have is democracy. Democracy means majority rule. Simple, that. Yes, in a state election, majority rules. in a government, in a country, in the United States, the states are choosing the president. Therefore, this is a republic. So this is a joke. Trump lost to Hillary by the amount of votes. Bush lost to Gore by amount of votes, yet they both won. So this is not actually a true democracy. Combined with the tools that it is provided to the enemies, let's say, countries such as Russia, Iran, China, that they would love to see United States falling and not doing well. When I was a kid, there was constant news about US disasters. They couldn't find anything wrong with US, so they would show hurricanes and earthquakes and things like that. But this time, thanks to Trump, the whole world saw the problem of the United States. And United States lost a lot of respect.
Mhm.
As a leader, especially. And a lot of countries actually very much benefited from that, unfortunately. And this is extremely sad for the future of humanity. Just the fact that we vote for a US president in the United States as an American doesn't end there. US is so goddamn powerful that sometimes I think the rest of the world should have a saying in who should be the president, because the president of the United States can actually affect the world, and they do. So again,
Sean,
yes.
thank you for that. I think we have to move on because there's a whole bunch of people that are lined up to speak. If you want to just wrap it up, and then we'll go to Steve West. I mean, I thought it was very. I was struck by your statement that the perfect would be a mix of the socialist and the capitalist. Years ago, I'm looking at your age, probably before you were born, when Reagan was president. There was a debate between Ernest Lefevre, who was his human rights secretary, and who was a complete joke, with him and Richard Barnett, and he accused Barnett of having said that in the United States we don't have any rights, that they have rights in Russia. And his response was, he said, you've said that repeatedly, and I correct you, and you keep repeating it. And as he was speaking, Lefevre's neck sort of disappeared. And he said, what I said is that in Russia, they have certain substantive rights, the right to education as far as you can go, the right to free medical care, the right. He said, in the United States, we have procedural rights such as freedom of religion and freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, rights that I hold very dear. But one without the other is meaningless. And that's what we don't have here, is Medicare for all. And we don't have, anyway, let me not take any more time and go to Steve West. And then Emily.
Thank you. Am I being heard?
Yes.
I hope so, because I really want to thank you, Michael and David, for opening up this door, and for Barry to put his foot in the door. I used to say to Terry Rizzo when we were speaking, if it wasn't for the Republicans, I'd hate the Democrats. It was said mostly as a joke, but it had a lot of truth in it. And I thought that perhaps if she really listened to that and other Democrats really listened to that, they could wake up and see what we're giving away and how we're giving it away. I have a few specifics, not theory, but specifics that I'd like to talk to you about. And just one thing about my background, writing on Barry's background, is I have started something called the In Crowd. And the In Crowd, among other things, is about unity, unity of all the people that are working for justice and for equality and for change for the better. So one frustration that I've had, and I've had this for a long time, and I'm not speaking for myself, I'm speaking for a whole lot of people with dark skin. I'm speaking for a lot of people who are in the Democratic Party and feel that they are ignored, devalued. The official party, and I wish I was speaking to those people right now, and I appreciate the opportunity to, not be speaking to Terry and others in the leadership, but to speak to people who I believe can listen. The deficiency is there's an arrogance in the Democratic Party. And until you look at yourselves and face that and understand, I'm going to give you one example without naming a name, but this is something that's happened recently in the last several months, and it rings in my ears and it breaks my heart. I work a lot in the Black and brown communities in Palm Beach County, bringing people together and bringing people to action. And I spoke to one of the leaders of the Democratic Party. In the past had spoken to Terry several times and said, look, I work in these Black and brown communities, and I can tell you that the average person on the street, as well as the leadership, the attitude is that once the Republicans never come here to make promises. Democrats come here, make a promise, never keep it, and 4 years later, we see them again with the same promises. Now, I understand, and I speak to these people and say, when the Democrats have power, we've got to give them power, in Tallahassee, at least. When the Democrats have power, they will be able to do the things that they're promising, and we have to come out and back them. But in the meantime, when I said I have a trust, and there are other people that work with us who have trust from that community, and they talk to us, they tell us these things, and we can bring votes in because the people in the Democratic Party working on the surface for the Democrats, they are so frustrated. They are so demoralized by not being recognized, by coming up with things that they want to do that aren't supported. And I'm not talking about asking for money. I'm talking about just support, just communication. So the words that ring in my ear is when I said, I can really bring votes in. And the answer was to this unnamed person high in the Democratic Party is, what's in it for me? That has angered me and thrown me so far back, because I said, what do you mean? I thought it was a joke. What's in it for me? Well, it wasn't a joke. He said, I have all my candidates are going to win, and we don't need anybody to help. Now, these are actual words in conversation, and I wasn't asking for anything. So there's an arrogance, there's an insular, I don't know what the word is, but they're insular. Any people who try, like Barry and so many others, who try to contribute are just shut down. If it's not the idea of a leader in the Democrat Party, it's not an idea. And I've seen this going on for years. So I want to tell you, as an outsider like Sean is, that you have to pay attention, you have to welcome, and you have to embrace the people who, in this case, put you in. This Democratic Party in Florida did not beat Trump. And just Joy, just hearing that is like listening to a cheerleader. And we'll do it better next time. Well, I've been down here for 15, 17 years, and I keep on hearing that. We'll do it better next time. And we only lost by a couple of votes. Well, you need to, the Democrat, I don't mean to address you individually, but the Democratic Party really needs to wake up and be that wide tent that it claims to be. Now, just give me a second because I want to talk about money. Money is something that destroys a movement. Money and ego are the two things that destroy a movement. Now, I know you need money. I do everything that I do without a penny in it or a penny out. And as Barry or somebody pointed out, with the communications devices that we have now, we could communicate with everybody in this county for free and all the time. We don't have to wait for somebody to give us a donation or a media outlet to open up with pretty much meaningless spots and an occasional article. So I just like to emphasize and to point out that when money corrupts, you see it corrupting the present government. You see it in every single way. Sean, I'm sure you saw it in your country. It destroys the message. When you put money ahead of the message, then you're absolutely losing the message. I get, as everybody on this Zoom does, every single day, a whole slew of emails that come in. Give me $5, give me $3, but the message isn't there. You know, there's contests. I didn't make my quota today. Send me money. That's not a message. That doesn't motivate anybody. Maybe it gets some money in, but it really is losing the essence. So the second thing I want to suggest is lose the arrogance, embrace the people who want to help, who are dying to help, who are so against Trump, and they don't work with enthusiasm, and they don't work in partnership with the Democratic Party. And it's not the fault of the people on the outside. It's the fault of the Democratic Party, just with too much goddamn ego and doesn't want to listen and accept people like Barry, who can do so much. The silver-tongued orator who can do
Hey,
it.
Marcia, I'm on a Zoom. Can I call you back later?
What's that?
Not for you.
No. That was Emily.
Barry can do it in oro and whatever the French word is for gold, and he can do it with that silver tongue of his. Give me 1 second, and I know everybody wants to go. I just want to see that I'm not missing anything that I'd like to express.
Okay, while you're looking, Steve, I have to just jump in for a second and
Sure.
say, in fact, I'm going to turn it over to Rob Resnick, who's our parliamentarian and also timekeeper and enforcer, so that finish up.
I'm going to give up.
But Rob
done?
is gonna ask people to limit it to. I mean, it's
We got
8:30 already. Maybe 3 or 4 minutes a speaker. And Barry, I think, wants to comment. Why don't you finish up, Steve, and then we'll let Barry go.
I relinquish my time. Thank you for listening. I hope some of what I said makes sense and opens up.
A lot of sense. Barry, were you going to say something before Emily?
I would definitely like to respond to some of the things they said, especially the wonderful comments by Steve, but I would love to hear from Emily and the others. And then at the end, I would like to respond to some of what I've heard.
Great. Okay, Emily?
Okay, thank you very much for allowing me to attend and allowing me to speak.
Oh.
I am truly an interloper. I am from Green Acres, a whole different world. I have been in Florida for 20 years, came from Massachusetts. Steve, it was good to hear you speak, but you don't say car correctly. I was a delegate to the Democratic Convention in San Francisco. I was a Gary Hart delegate. I had worked for candidates in Massachusetts, John Perry, Paul Tsongas, and I was very disturbed at what I saw in San Francisco in '84, because people were not there to listen to Henry Cisneros and other people speak. They were there for the party. And I don't mean the Democratic Party. I mean for the boat rides, to hear Robin Williams at the Armory. So much money was wasted that was the end of my being loyal to the party. We moved to Florida, and I became an active person supporting candidates. I supported Lois Frankel. I supported Laurie Berman, Mark Pafford, many, many others, and then became a lobbyist for the Alzheimer's Association. So a lot of people know me from the other end of the world. So I look at the Democratic Party from outside. And I can tell you some things that I agree with so many things that people have said. Arlene, you know, I always agree with you. Look at this group. We're all old white people for the most part. That's wrong. We need to see people of color, we need to diversify this party instead of having a hierarchy of people who have been there forever and have earned their stripes. This is not a ladder pot. It should be representative of the people. And it's not. We're a group of old people. No offense, Sean. Okay. That's number one. Number two, all politics is local. And if you really want to get votes, you have to not only do mass media, you have to go door to door. And I know this is difficult in the time of COVID, we're a mass, and you have to have your message meet the needs of the group to which you are speaking. If you're speaking to the Black community, you have to realize what is important to them and stress those things. If you're speaking to a group of Cubans, you have to make them understand that we are not going to become a communist country. We're not going to have
That's 3 minutes,
communist
just so you
dictator.
know.
We have to really tailor our messages to the audience to whom we're speaking. I think the Democratic Party, if they want candidates to become elected, have to really reevaluate their message. And that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Emily. Judy? You have to unmute.
Here we go. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I think, well, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the thing that is really on my mind is 2022 and 2024. 2022, when DeSantis and Rubio are up for re-election. 2024, when Scott is up for re-election. And of course, all of the state offices except one are held by Republicans, only one Democrat. And who is going to run? I don't know. I haven't heard of anybody running for governor or Senate. One person I'd love to see in the Senate is Val Demings.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she needs a little encouragement, but she'd be great. Anyway, that's all I want to say about that. The only other thing I want to talk about is defund the police. That was really horrible terminology for a movement.
Mhm.
It's been destructive. They've weaponized it. It needs to be changed.
Yeah.
Now, something I thought of that I think is better than reform the police, because that's old and it hasn't worked as well as it was meant to, is restructure the police. Or maybe somebody smarter than me could figure something else, but that has got to go. It's so hard to counter. Anyway, that's all.
I think David is going to tell you what he said the other night, which is that he thinks that the slogan was invented in Russia.
No, I don't know that it was invented in Russia, but I think as soon as they saw it, they understood how divisive and dangerous that could be to the Democrats. and they made sure it went all over the place.
It was
I mean, when
launched
I
by Black Lives Matter.
first heard defund the police, my eyes crossed. I was
Yeah.
like, I like the idea. It's gonna kill us. And
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet it did.
Oh, it did. I'm sure we lost Democratic seats because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I watched the Georgia debate between what's her name and what's his name, and she kept hammering him about defund the police, and he had no defense. And it was awful.
Huh.
It really made him look weak.
3 minutes.
Barry, you want to kind of wrap up?
Yeah, I'm not sure if my comments resonated or not, but defund the police comes from Black Lives Matter. It's their platform.
Who is it?
If you look at their original platform, you'll see it there. You'll also see it there where they call Israel an apartheid state, racist state, and say despicable things about Israel. There's an element in the Democratic Party that believes that anything a Black person says is automatically gospel. And if you say anything against it, you're a racist. There's two different movements within the Black community. There's the Farrakhan group and the Martin Luther King group. The Farrakhan group is hateful. They think all the police are vile. They don't care for white people, and they don't like Jews, and they don't like Israel. Then there's another side where they're the Martin Luther King side. They like Jewish people, they like Christian people, they like all people, they like everybody, they like peace. They don't like bad police, but they don't dislike all police. And the movement can go in two different directions. And the Democratic Party has catered to people who are taking us in a bad direction and refuse to speak up, and we're tagged with it. And nobody can say anything about it because they don't want to be called a racist. And it's wrong. We shouldn't be catering to this. Now, also, somebody said, I think it was Mayor Shelley said, you know, the Democratic Party needs to support our candidates. We do support candidates. If you come with a bag of money, the Democratic Party will support you instantly. I've seen it happen a number of times in Palm Beach County. People who come, they take a bunch of money from the developers, and all of a sudden the Democratic Party is saying, wow, these are great candidates. Look at all the money this guy's got. I've seen it happen over and over and over again until I'm sick of it. We back candidates with money. Drew Martin ran for office. Was he backed? No. He's been a lifelong environmentalist. He's the strongest environmentalist you've ever seen, the most sincere, wonderful, sweet, pleasant, honest person who wants to protect the planet. He had no chance. Sissy Durango, she was somebody who's a legend in the environmental community. She ran for office. She got no support, zero support. Why? She didn't have money. My son Ari, as a teenager, was doing rallies for gun control and other things. Democratic Party had nothing to do with him. Some of them maybe a bit, but hardly anything. And I'm not going to talk about myself, what they did to me. I've litigated every single issue that the Democratic Party believes in. I've litigated for free and spoken out on it as a rabbi from the pulpit. I am promoting the Democratic Party, and I've lost many, many members. Many members I've lost because I talk about Biden and I denounce Trump from the pulpit. I write Jewish Journal articles praising Biden and denouncing Trump. I've lost many members. Has any Democratic official ever come to me and said, hey, this is good, let's work together? Never. They never have anything to do with me. But forget about me. All these other candidates that are good and pure, the Democratic Party wants nothing to do with them unless they have money. And they say the same thing every time. He's not viable. He's not a viable candidate. He can't raise money. And the most despicable thing is what they did to Mark Offerman. Mark Offerman galvanized the community to go against Trump and organize rallies at Mar-a-Lago. And I'm not just saying he organized rallies. He's smart. He has clever ideas. He knows what he's doing. They wanted nothing to do with him whatsoever. And I would say that everyone on this call, everyone on this Zoom line, if you think that Terry Rizzo is going to change her stripes and all of a sudden everything's going to go well because she's going to do things a little differently, there's no way. There's no way. She doesn't respond to anybody who's really sincere about helping the party from the grassroots. Nobody. The only way it's going to change is if we make it change.
We have to do it.
And okay, and I'll finish up now.
Yeah.
The first thing to do to make a change would be to say to reinstate and to recognize what Mark Offerman's doing and to help and ask him to lead campaigns. And the next time somebody comes up, ask him to help lead the party, ask the environmentalists to lead the party, ask Arlene Houston to help lead the party, and get people who are grassroots people like Steve West to help lead the party and listen to them. What Steve said is right. They're arrogant and they need to listen. And I'm telling you, if we do the same thing that we're doing before and just making tinkering changes, it ain't gonna work. We should be ashamed that Florida lost to Trump.
Yeah.
He's despicable, and we need to find out, and we need to ask ourselves why and make some serious changes.
You know, Barry, I've been saying for years that DeSantis and before him, Scott, are killing Floridians, killing them. Stone cold killers.
I mean, to Satan.
Medicaid
Right.
rollout. No, but I mean, this is something that you can put to people that may not be natural Democratic voters. Ask them, you know, you've got 800,000 Floridians who make too much money to go on Medicaid and not enough money to pay for health insurance. And those people could be getting free insurance on a Medicaid rollout under the Affordable Care Act. And all the governor has to do is authorize it. And initially 100% was paid by the feds. Now it's 90%. It's basically no cost to Florida. 800,000 people. If you say that 1 out of every 1,000 die unnecessarily, prematurely, because they don't have health insurance, that's 800 Floridians dying every year because of these people. And if we got out on the street with signs saying that, you know, getting in the face of Rubio, you know, I don't know how we get in the face of DeSantis because he's up in Tallahassee.
No, you are right. Michael, let me just tell you this also. I filed a lawsuit on behalf of teachers who were forced back into the classroom because DeSantis said, okay, you guys are going back. And all these teachers had to go back into the classroom. People who were medically compromised, people who had cancer were told you have to go back. I filed a lawsuit. I had hundreds of teachers calling me up. The Democratic Party, if they worked with those teachers to say that you have the right not to have to risk your life, many of them have left the profession. The Democratic Party should be backing this lawsuit and grassroots efforts like this. My wife teaches kindergarten. She was forced to either go back and teach or quit. And I'm immunocompromised. They don't care. They don't care about that. I had a client who had cancer and they told her go back and teach or quit. She had been teaching for 40 years. They don't care, but the Democratic Party, you're right, Michael, needs to get outraged and be on the side of people who are fighting for causes like this. I couldn't agree with you more. And I do thank you for allowing a platform for this type of conversation. It's very necessary in the party.
That's what we need. So, and anyone have any quick comments before we wrap up?
Judy and Sean already spoke.
Yeah.
Unless I want to speak. No, no more hands. Nobody?
Sean has a comment.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been fun. So.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait, before you go, Michael,
What's that?
before you go,
Uh-oh.
I didn't subject you to my Hanukkah music, but
Oh, no.
Lador Vador has non-theistic, rational, science-based religion. And we also promote democratic ideals and causes and speak out against Trump and all the bad people. So if you want, join Lador Vador on Shabbat and Hanukkah, and you can celebrate with us. We don't insult your intelligence. So we're glad to have you. We just go in by link on Lador Vador's website, and you can listen to us and you can participate. Thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate it.
Are they catchy
All right.
songs?
Good night, everyone. David, you're going to shut us down?
Yeah. 5, 4, 3. Thanks for coming. 2, 1.